Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here with another Sunday session, and tonight is open mic night. That means it's your opportunity to ask me any question that you like and see whether or not I can help you on your property development journey. Now, in order to do that, we ask that you click on the links below. So that's propdev.info/open-mic. And by doing that, you submit those questions early. That gives me the opportunity to do any homework that I need to do in order to give you, I guess, an appropriate answer. That said, got a cracking show ahead of us today, a whole bunch of questions sitting in the queue. So let's get to our very first question from Lauren. So Lauren asks, minimum lot sizes in Victoria. I understand that they don't exist and instead it's based on a site coverage rule. Would it be safe to assume that if I bought 700 square meters to 800 square meters of raw site, that I could build a 3 townhouse project of approximately 200 square meters in size? And roughly 150 for the back 2-bedroom townhouse. Is there actually any rules, as I haven't, I guess, worked out how to calculate this? Okay, let me give you just a very rough breakdown on how to actually calculate this, Lauren, because working out rules of thumb on what is actually achievable. So as you said, Victoria is based on a site coverage rule. Now, there's a couple of little gotchas here. Firstly, there is a maximum site coverage that they give you, but there's also a whole bunch of, I guess, other challenges that you need to actually meet, such as, garden space requirements and non-permeable space and a whole bunch of things like that. So under the new rules, you can get potentially, in theory, up to a 0.65% site coverage. Okay, now that sounds very, very generous, but by the time you actually calculate all of the on costs of all the other elements, it is extraordinarily rare to get, excuse me, anywhere near that 65% coverage rule. So as a rule of thumb, use a 50% site coverage in order to work out your dwelling sizes. So that said, we're going to actually work backwards. We're not going to start with the land size itself, but rather we're going to start with the dwelling size. Now, what you've said is you've got 200 square meters for the main houses and 150 square meters for the back. But I'm just going to use a very basic, calculation using that 200 square meter home perspective. Now, assuming it's a 2-story building, okay, then typically what you're going to find is that 60% of that 2-story dwelling will be on the ground floor and 40% will be on the second floor, because you need to have some setbacks on that typically. Now, under the new Victorian rules, those setbacks are a lot more generous, and you might be able to push the boundaries on that. But this has been the traditional calculation method pretty much all the way around the country until now. These new Victorian rules to work out the density, you might be able to squeeze a little bit more in. But just for the moment, if we use that 60% rule, that means of that 200 square meter home, approximately 120 square meters of that is going to be on the ground floor. Okay, so that is your site coverage element. Now, if you want 3 dwellings, that's 3 times 120, which is going to give you, 360, if I can do my math appropriately. And based on a 50% site coverage, we're going to double that, and that's going to give us 720 square meters. So that is the minimum requirement with regards to what we would get under, assuming that we had 60% of our dwelling on the ground floor. Now, then the maximum size would be, well, if I calculated what it would take for 4 dwellings, then somewhere between that 720 and that number for 4 would be the range that we could get 3 in with a little bit of ample space. So there is a little bit of math required. It is all about understanding the particular product in your area. So in some areas, the typical product size is going to be 150 square meters. Typical site in somewhere else might be 250. So you need to understand, by being an area expert, what is the product that that particular area wants, and then work out your site coverage based on that. Now, I'd be talking to your local town planner to say, in this council, are we able to push the boundaries? So that 65% site coverage rule that you're getting, for example, in this council, are we getting, further than the 50%? Are we getting 55? Are we getting 60%? How generous are they actually being in allowing us to push the boundary towards that 65%. Now, that's going to be a council by council specific interpretation, but having a good relationship with your town planner in that area as an area expert will help you massively with regards to being able to understand how far you can push the boundary. Excuse me, folks. After having delivered the developer launchpad last weekend for 2 days solid talking, my voice is still recovering. So please accept my humble apologies if I am still, my voice is still breaking down from time to time. Next question comes from RB. No actual name, just RB. So hey, RB. It's September 2025. Is there still money to be made in property development in Western Australia, Perth specifically, and surrounding areas for a mum and dad beginner team? We want to use our superannuation, 500K plus, and we want to retire in 2030. We'd like to pay off debt of $5 million. So firstly, RB, there's a couple of questions within your question. So I'm going to try and break it down into the individual elements. So firstly, is there money to be made in Perth, Western Australia? I'm going to say absolutely categorically yes. Okay. Now, you'll see that the Perth market has gone through a relatively decent growth burst of late. There goes my voice again. That has been largely pushed by long-term buy and hold people, and more specifically by buyers agents, I guess, putting a huge push on that Perth market and pushing the price points up for a period of time. Now, that is from an investment point of view, okay? Now, from a development point of view, very different underlying market fundamentals to what an investor is actually looking at. And the market fundamentals there, I covered this greatly at our developer launchpad event, and equally I did a little breakout of that into a telecast on YouTube here called Over the Horizon. Go back and look at that, where I've suggested that all of the market drivers are actually in the right direction to give us a push pretty much around the country, and Perth in particular is one that's going to actually benefit from that. So I think that there is absolutely money to be made for small-scale mum and dad developers, novice developers in the Perth market. So that's part one to your question. The next part, you said you want to do this in your super fund and you've got 500K in your super. This is where it gets a little tricky because there are some very, very strict rules with what you can and can't do within your super. Now, I can't give you advice here, and I need to very much, I guess, kind of put this little disclaimer out here. You need to go seek professional advice on this because there's some very, very, very big gotchas if you're going to do anything in and around, I guess, your self-managed super fund in particular from a development perspective. So the first thing is you cannot borrow in order to improve the value of the property within super, which means that if you've got 500K, you need to do your entire development within 500K and pay cash for that. I don't think the probability of that is high that you're going to be able to do that. So you can't borrow to improve the property. Now, if you were fully loaded in your cash position in your super and you could do it all of the cash, then the answer to that would be yes, you probably could do that. Now, there are little mechanisms to work around that where the super fund themselves is not doing the borrowing to do the improvement, but rather they engage a third party and that third party does the development and the super fund buys the finished product as a single contract. Now, if that's the case, you're effectively paying a management fee for someone else to run the project on your behalf in order for you to get the single contract. That means that you are not using your super fund to actually do the development per se, but rather your super fund is the catalyst to actually making that occur. The third party gets a clip on the ticket. You get a clip on the ticket as well. There is some money to be made. And again, if you go back in our catalog on YouTube, you'll find a previous presentation from a company called Supervest who can help you if you're looking to do that sort of thing as well. The last way to do that with super is, I guess, for your super fund to invest in someone else's deal where there is an arm's length transaction in order to do that. And if you can do that, then you yourself are not developing, but rather you're investing in someone else's deal. you could potentially do that in an interest rate perspective, or even at times as a profit split, depending upon, I guess, the needs and requirements of that person and that particular deal at that point in time. Lots of different ways to actually do that. Be very, very, very careful that you, the human, and you, the super fund, do not join forces together to try and do a development. Because if you have a controlling interest in the property, in the project, I should say, so that is more than 50%. So I'm not sure if it's 50 and above or if it's 49 and above. So again, double check that, I guess, with your accountant and solicitor. But if you have a controlling interest in it, then it's not deemed to be an arm's length transaction. And so I guess there's a lot of danger in that. Now, super important from a superannuation perspective, especially if it's self-managed super, it is audited every single year. So it's not a random audit, it's a compulsory audit. So that if you are breaking the rules at all, it's not maybe you'll get caught. You will get caught. So please make sure you actually understand what you're doing before you actually go and do it, because it's, I guess, a very significant impact if you don't. Now, there are ways and mechanisms. I've kind of given you some rabbit holes to go down, RB, but hopefully that will actually help you with regards to that. Now, with regards to the last element, wanting to pay off the 5 million, I guess, that you've got in debt, not knowing your entire portfolio, I guess, what assets you've got that are good, bad, or indifferent. If you've been investing, which is the traditional approach, the typical path to investing is collect as many properties as possible, using debt as leverage, let them grow with the market for as long as they can, and then at some point you're going to sell some down, pay off the debt. So the question is, if you've got $5 million in debt, I'm assuming you've got a large portfolio of property. At some point, the whole plan with a long-term buy and hold is to sell down some of those assets. So what you need to do is have a look at your portfolio and go, which assets have already done the heavy lifting? They've already done the growth. They're now in a non-growth phase. And if I cash those in, they will then pay off the debt on the ones that are still accumulating and turn those into positive cash flow properties. That's the goal in an investment world. And trust me, I did 20 years of buy and hold, and I know that process works. It's just a little slower than this property development game, but it is absolutely possible. Hoping that helps, RB. Next question from Karina. Karina says, I have a block of land in Berrigan in New South Wales. Now, Berrigan is, I guess, to the south, excuse me, to the south and slightly inland, okay? Very, very small population. I did a little bit of a Google search on this, and somewhere in the vicinity of about 1,500 people, 1,500 people live in Berrigan. So a building inspector has said that they can get 4 townhouses on the site, and a friend of mine says that they are going to do a feasibility to see if they can actually get 5 in order to subdivide. I currently have no finances to develop and looking what to do. Are there any investors out there to help me? So firstly, again, multiple questions within the one question. So first things first, the fact that your site is developable does not necessarily mean that it's profitable, Karina. So you said a friend of yours is actually going to do the feasibility. That is great. Okay, so they're going to work out the profitability of the deal, assuming you can sell it. Now, there's a risk element here that that it would not be appropriate for me to not mention. Okay, the population of Berrigan being very, 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 very small, and particularly 1,500 people, means that the number of people coming into Berrigan is extraordinarily small, which means that if you do not get the exact product right, so the perfect fit for the product and the perfect price point for the product, there is a very, 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 very high danger that you will miss the market and nobody will want to buy your stock. Now, if you're in a high population area and you make that same mistake, then typically you're going to find someone that will put up with the fact that it's not a perfect fit because it fits their budget. But when you've got such a little margin for error with the number of people moving into the area, it needs to be absolutely smack bang perfect in there. Otherwise, you run a very high danger of, I guess, not being able to sell the finished product. And the only day we ever get paid is if we sell that at the end. So the exit strategy is as important as the feasibility itself. So whilst you can theoretically sell a property for a certain price point, it needs to be the exact price point, and there needs to be enough demand for people to want to do that. So please be very, very careful before you decide that you are going to go ahead with that deal. Now, assuming that you've done your research and you've, I guess, identified the risks and you've got the right product and all those sorts of things, your second part to the question is, are there any investors out there to help me? Now, I've actually got a second question that is very similar to this in the pipeline. So what I might do is I might try to flesh this out a little deeper, because it's going to help you and the next person all at the same time. Okay. So firstly, when you're raising money in order to do a development, there are some very, very, very strict ASIC regulations with regards to how you raise funds. It is extraordinarily important that you must go get, I guess, financial and legal advice. And I need to find my, where's my educational in nature kind of comment? Okay. The ASIC regulations have a couple of different layers to it, depending upon how much money you're borrowing and where you're borrowing it from. The most common way that people do it as a one-off venture, and this is key, it's a one-off venture, is a thing called the 20-12-2 rule. That is no more than 20 people in any 12 months raising no more than $2 million. Okay. Now, this is where a lot of people get this wrong, because they don't actually understand I guess what the 20 mean, what the 12 mean, and what the 2 mean. So I'm going to try and break it down for you in lay speak. And then again, please go speak to your solicitor and excuse me, my voice is breaking up really bad. And validate this. So the 20 people, firstly, they must be known to you. So you cannot just do a post on Facebook to 1,000 people or 2,000 people and say, hey, who would like to invest in my property? That is instantly a breach of 20, because you are going out to more than 20 people. So it's not whether 20 people lend you money, it's whether or not you've made the offer to more than 20 people, okay? Whether they accept the offer or otherwise, okay? The other part to the 20 is it must be a personal invitation. It must be that I know you and that I am giving you a personal invitation to come in. So in my instance, I go, hey, Karina, we've known each other for a really long time. You know, I'm a property developer. Would you be interested in investing in my one project? Now, I'm not doing Karina and John and Mary and Steve and Bob. And so I'm going, hey, Karina, you're my friend. Would you like to become involved? Now, if I ask you and you say no, that is one of my 20 that's been consumed. So it's not whether or not you actually, I guess, participate. It's whether or not I've actually asked you. So that 20 part is super important. Now, that is on an assumption that you are, I guess, what is called a retail investor. So a retail investor means that you are relatively I guess, inexperienced in financial matters, and so you need to be protected with regards to how the legislation, I guess, puts things together. Okay, then there's a layer above that, which is a sophisticated investor. So if you're a sophisticated investor, it's deemed that you've earned enough money and you have enough financial experience that you can make educated and informed decisions on your risk profile with regards to how you invest your cash. So the level of protection for I guess, a retail investor versus a sophisticated investor, the retail investor is protected a lot stronger because they are deemed to not have as much worldly experience, whereas the sophisticated investor is deemed to have a little more experience, and so they're less protected. Okay, so either way, you need to understand the person investing in your deal. Are they retail? Are they sophisticated? And ideally get a letter from their accountant to actually, I guess, assign that number. Now, if they are sophisticated, then they won't potentially, I guess, count towards your 20 people, because I guess they are, I guess, a class above. Okay, so that's the first thing. Any 12 months. So once you start making the offer, 12 months later, that time period expires. Anytime in that 12 months every piece of capital that you actually raise counts towards the $2 million. Now, it's not $2 million towards this one project and 2 million towards the next project and 2 million towards the next project. It's 2 million across all of your projects at the exact same time inside that 12-month period. So you have to be extraordinarily careful in doing this. I cannot stress enough, you need to seek professional advice here. This is dangerous territory if you don't know what you're doing. Then there's a layer above that. Okay, so layer above that is to say, okay, we're now needing to raise a little bit more than $2 million, or we need to go a little bit beyond the 20 people. So now we're going to require what is called an AFSL license, Australian Financial Services License. Now you can go and get your full AFSL license, and it's quite expensive, and I guess a lot of compliance, regulatory and compliance requirements in order to do that. Or you can, I guess, borrow that license off someone who actually is an AFSL holder through a mechanism called a CAR, a Certified Authorized Representative. So that AFSL license holder takes all the legal and compliance and regulatory obligations, and you work effectively as an agent on their behalf. They validate that the investors, whether they're residential or sophisticated, they validate whether or not they are, I guess, what category they fall into. They make sure that you're compliant with, I guess, the amount of money being raised, whether or not you need to put a product disclosure statement or an information memorandum out to the investors and those sorts of things. They look after that regulatory compliance. They charge you a fee in order to do that. But excuse me, you know that you're going to be squeaky clean because you've had somebody, I guess, sanity checking your regulatory and compliance requirements. So if having said all of that, the best way to raise money is people who already know, like, and trust you. Friends, family, work colleagues, those sorts of things where they already know who you are, they already trust you as an individual, where you can give them a personal invitation, where they know, even though this might be your first property development, they know you as a person, they know, I guess, how you deal with stress, what you're like in a day-to-day arrangement, what your personality traits are like, whether or not this is something within your skill set. You can have those conversations. So friends, family, anybody that's inside your mobile phone. I was looking for my mobile phone to wave that around. Anybody that's in that probably already knows, likes, and trusts you. They are prime candidates for the people that you may invite into that first 20 round of things. So hoping, Karina, that helps you very much in that regard. And the upcoming question, I'll call it out as we get there, that person as well. So thank you. Okay, next one. Now, this is a really interesting question because it's actually nothing to do with property development, but rather speaking. So firstly, this one comes from Toby. Toby says, love your speech, Rob. Love your message, love your tone. They're very infectious and very motivating, and speaking is a real talent, especially doing so confidently and with authority. What techniques and structures do you utilize with an outward speaking forum in order to maintain interest and candor within the chat? I realize genuine interest and confidence go a long way, but what about structure, timing, and humor? Thank you, Toby. Really interesting, mate. Look, this is both a learnt skill, so it can be taught, but I guess it comes really from practice and repetition and just doing it often enough that you feel confident. Now, I have to admit, I still get nervous when I get onto stage, but usually my nerves are gone in about 30 seconds or so. So all the nerves are the lead up to that and making sure that the audience is ready and prepared and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot that goes into, I guess, getting the room ready for you to actually take center stage so that when you stand on stage, they see you with authority from the start. Okay, so crowd warm up and those sorts of things are super important with regards to all of that. And then once you're actually delivering, you want to make sure that you actually are checking in with your audience on a regular basis to seek their feedback, get a feedback loop to make sure that you're actually giving them the value that they're actually looking for in this process. Probably the biggest tip that I would say is it doesn't matter what I think of how good I've delivered. It doesn't matter whether or not I have something that I would like them to hear. What matters most is whether or not my message helps them. So my goal is to actually understand my audience before I get on stage. What are their pain points? What are their challenges? What are their, the things that are a thorn in their side? And if I can help them solve a problem, then they are going to want to stay engaged and listening. So I don't make it about me. I make it about them. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give you, Toby. So hoping that helps, mate. Next one comes from Amber. So Amber says, "Hi, Rob. On the weekend of your 2-day webinar session, which was a bomb, thank you very much. That was the developer launchpad that we ran a couple of weekends ago. I'm currently volunteering to build a cultural centre in Greystanes in New South Wales, which is the first of its kind. I've worked with Urbis and a team of consultants to get ready for, excuse me, for the construction certificate. The DA has already been approved. We are leasing the land, and it was a messy process and lots of red tape. Okay. I've been intrigued with the property since since starting this process, and then went on to get my real estate qualifications, ready to become a licensed agent. However, I've now turned another direction since your developer launchpad weekend." Thank you, Amber. That's inspiring and motivating to hear. Now, then she goes on to say, "I personally don't have any money to develop. I'm currently unemployed and I'm seeking a position to get into property development as an employee. Is this something that I do? Happy to discuss a voluntary position or something else. Would you consider that?" So firstly, Amber, well done for actually having the tenacity to ask, and more specifically to ask the tenacity to ask in a very, very public forum like this. So I would be more than happy to have my team reach out to you and understand, what skills you bring to the table and get you to actually provide a resume to that effect. However, what I would like to say is at this very moment in time, I don't have a job, but I'm always open-minded if there's somebody that comes to the table and can add value to my world. Exactly what I just said a couple of moments ago about the public speaking side. If you can solve my problems, sometimes problems I don't even realize are there, then I'm open-minded to saying, can we create a position? But no promises, Amber. I will get my team to reach out to you. That said, I guess I want to touch on the point where you said you personally don't have money to develop. A lot of people coming into this world don't, Amber, and the fact that you want to work in the industry is going to give you some great insights into the process itself. And one of the things that you're going to learn along the way is that if we can solve someone else's problem, in many instances, we can actually do deals with a lot less money than we think. Okay, so for example, if the landowner, wants to stay living in the area, they've been there 20 or 30 years. They're getting to the point where the property is needing maintenance and that sort of thing. They're getting old. They don't want to maintain the property in the backyard. They want to downsize, but in that community, there is no product that currently suits a downsizer. Well, if you have the opportunity to develop their site and you happen to be creating the same stock as what they need, you might be able to do a win-win scenario with either a joint venture with them or perhaps only buying half the site off of them, and I guess in exchange for giving them, the product that they want on the other side. What you've done is you've listened to their needs and you, offering them a solution in order to do that. Now, if that's the case, then you're probably not needing to buy the property off them because they already own it and they bought it a couple of market cycles ago and their holding costs are very, very low. They're effectively staying in the deal, which means that you don't need deposits and you don't need serviceability. Now, if that's the case, all you need is the liquid cash to run the deal, okay? And if the deal is good enough, you may be able to get investors to help fund that liquid cash and pay them an interest rate in order to do that. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify what is the problem the problem of the vendor, the problem of the investor needing somewhere to put their money, and can you solve the problem with your knowledge, effort, and skills? Now, the example that I gave you is just one example. There is actually 8 different ways that you can do no and low money down. Now, sometimes it means very, 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 very little money. Sometimes it means some money, but it's delayed in the process, and a whole bunch of variations in between. So, no and low money down doesn't mean no money involved. It means it doesn't necessarily have to be your money. And there are ways to tap into things like equity within the existing property, ways to tap into the soft equity that you get through the development approval uplift, and a whole bunch of other ways that you might be able to defer or sometimes even avoid many of the costs in the process. And in doing so, control the property as you add value. And then whereas you add value, you can then unlock that, I guess, later in the cycle. So understand it is possible, Amber. So I want to motivate and inspire you to say you can do it. Make sure you turn up to our meetups. We run these all the way around the country. So I guess links to our meetups and that sort of thing. So Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. So for you, I guess the nearest one is the Sydney one at Parramatta. We run that the second weekend of every single month. So please make sure you actually turn up for that one. So hoping that helps, Amber. Next one comes from Jay. Jay says, my dad has a rural property that is bordered by houses and pending development. As mum has now passed, he wants to sell. Being 43 acres, he knows its value. He has nowhere to start. A few people have approached him and tried to give him council valuation for the property, which he knows is undervalued. Can you offer some guidance on where to start and who to approach? So firstly, Jay, every site has its own, I guess, mechanisms to actually work out whether or not it, I guess, the profitability of the deal. Now, depending upon what services are in the area, so water, stormwater, sewer, electrical, whether or not there's capacity in those will massively, massively, massively impact the profitability of actually doing this deal. Whether or not some of the site can be developed or all of the site can be developed, and how much we have to do to actually, I guess there's the work that needs to happen on site, and then there's the work that may need to happen I guess, off-site in order to drag those services and increase the capacity to actually get there. Without knowing the intricacies of your one particular deal and what that value is, you need to do a full site analysis and a full feasibility to actually work out what that profitability is. And what we do is what is called a reverse feasibility. So we go, what is the finished product going to sell for? We have to subtract the profit that the bank needs us to get in order for the bank to then, I guess, want to lend the money. Then we start subtracting the cost to pay council contribution fees, interest rates, land tax, stamp duties, all those sorts of things, plus the construction cost, plus interest, plus. And there's many, many pluses. And then whatever is left over is then what your land is worth. Okay. So that takes, I guess, for a site of that size, will take a little bit of time to actually calculate, but is very, very possible. What I would say to you is that the best place to actually go would be to Development Sites Australia. So Development Sites Australia is a buyer's agency that specializes in development sites. Because of the size of our community, we have a lot of people who are looking for deals all the time. And so our team will do that assessment for you for free to actually understand not just the developability of the site, but also the value of the site. Now, as buyer's agents, we get paid by the incoming person buying the site. Okay, so this is no fee to you. We get paid, though, if there is a successful outcome. So we will be open and honest and upfront with you with regards to, well, we want the highest price humanly possible for you because that improves how much we get paid from a finder's fee perspective, but it actually has to work. We need to leave money on the table for the developer to make money, or there is no deal. And one of the things that I would say is because people selling development sites are unaware of many of the hidden costs that are actually sitting in a deal, often they have an inflated expectation of what they think it will be worth because they don't realize that. So for a property like that, there might be $1 million, $1.5 million in council contribution fees, for example, which is just a pure tax for the privilege of creating that stock. Okay, so a lot of people don't realize the costs of those sorts of things up front. So we will do that. So log on to development.site and submit your property there. The address, how to contact you, those sorts of things, and as much as you can to assist us in actually making that determination. And then one of my staff will reach out to you over coming days once we've had a chance to have a look at that. We will understand your, I guess, your dad's requirements with regards to timelines and expectations and things like that. And we will then help him to unlock the maximum potential for a site. Now, one of the things that I can say is there are a couple of little tweaks that your dad can consider if he wants to maximize the price that he gets for his property. If he wants an instant sale, unconditional cash straight away, then the developer, you limit the number of people that can come to the table because there's not many people that are cashed up today. So that's the first. So you limit your buying pool straight away. The next thing is that person has to borrow that money, which means that their holding costs go through the roof, and they are incurring holding costs from day one. So that's interest, that's rates, there's land tax, and a whole bunch more, which then impacts the profitability of the deal. And they currently have an unknown outcome. They don't have a development approval. And so they're taking a lot of risk and a lot of holding costs. So the price point offered is going to be commensurate to that. Now, if your dad can work with them to say one of the two levers, so time is one lever and risk is the other lever. So if he can give them time to get all the development approvals in place and all those sorts of things, then that's going to save them from a cash flow perspective. It's all going to save them from a holding cost. So as an example, and if this was a $1 million property, and I know it's not a million, but I want to do easy math. If it was $1 million property at today's interest rates, about 6.5%, there's $65,000 in interest that we would usually be paying to the bank. So rather than giving it to the bank, we could give that money to your dad. Okay, so your dad instantly gets a $65,000 uplift on his property, and our profitability hasn't changed if he can wait the 12 months. Now, in doing so, we would not own the land, your dad would. So we would not be incurring land tax, we would not be incurring rates, your dad would. Okay, and so for that reason, there are additional savings. So we might be able to, I guess, bump that up now to maybe $100,000 because we've saved all of that. So now we've given almost a 10% uplift just for waiting 12 months. So that's the time lever. The longer you can wait, the more money that we can give you, but we give that at the tail end of the deal. The next one is risk. Would your dad be willing to share the risk and hence share the reward of the deal? Dad has equity in his property. That equity could go towards a contribution to assist in the construction costs or the funding of the construction cost of the deal. Now, if he's sharing the risk, he should equally share the profit and the uplift in the project as well. And so how much equity is in the property and how much money is needed from a funding perspective is a very, very, variable process. But profit split arrangements are very, very common in a 50-50 type arrangement. And depending upon the contribution of each of the parties, that can go 60-40, 40-60, etc. But it's a case-by-case basis. What I would say, submit the property, submit what your dad might be willing to consider. We can then make that assessment and come back and say, look, if you did an instant sale on this date, it'd be this price. If you did a delayed process or gave us some creative terms, we might be able to give you an uplift in price. And our job will be to find a developer and a buyer that will actually take that site on. I'm quite confident with the size of our community that we'd be able to do that on your dad's behalf. As an independent operator, our job is to help your dad to unlock his potential for the buyers in our community. So hoping that helps understand that one, Jay. Next one comes from Jimmy. Jimmy says, let me just get back to here. Jimmy says, hi, Rob. My strategy is land subdivision in New South Wales, and I'm curious about the pattern book designs that they have just released. I've reviewed them on the website and can see they're meant to be used for multi-dwelling properties, e.g., I guess a duplex, 3-pack, 4-pack, etc. My questions are, could I use these as a stacked strategy on top of my land subdivision? Considering that they're multi-dwellings, should I train myself and do market research for townhouses instead of land subdivision? Jimmy, Ramundo, I should say, great question. But I think we're confusing a couple of different elements here. Now, because they are multi-res, so duplexes, townhouses, etc., they're not necessarily going to apply in the same zoning that you're actually doing for your land subdivision. So from the first perspective, it may not be able to do that. The second thing I'd say is once you've actually got the development approval for the land subdivision, then each individual lot is on its own title. And once it's on its own title, you don't need the pattern design books for the fast track approval process, but rather it's just a normal, house, a single house going to a single block. And so it is just going to a building certifier or a building surveyor, slightly different terminology in different states. And they would make sure that you are compliant with all of the setbacks, whatever neighborhood character there might be with regards to the look and feel of that particular dwelling. And that is a very, very, very fast approval process. Private certifier, they would, in some instances, have council as a referral to just sign off to make sure that everything is compliant. But it is already a fast track approval process. You don't need to be limited by the pattern books that are actually sitting out there, but rather you could go to a project builder who already has a ton of patterns that they have dealt with their own building certifiers, and that they already know that they can get fast track approved because they've done this many, many, many times. So I would say you don't need to do the pattern book for you. And as a matter of fact, they're probably not the most appropriate place. I would be looking at project homes and see what house designs are going to fit on your blocks as the fastest way. If not, go get your own draftsman or architect and just go through your own private building certifier or surveyor and get those signed off. It is a relatively easy process. Hoping that one helps, Ramundo. Okay, next one comes from Jacinda. Jacinda says, does a council have a legal responsibility to allow a resident to provide a carport or some sort of shading for dwellings? A DA was approved several years ago, has now expired, and the new code under Plan SA won't approve the same carport that was previously approved. I don't know if we should hire a town planner or what we should do now. Thanks in advance. So Jacinda, really good question. And it really comes down to, a couple of factors. Now, each council is going to be slightly different. Each jurisdiction is going to be slightly different in this, but I want you to take this principle on board and take to your local town planner and get them to actually assess this. Now, if you were previously allowed to do something and you are now not allowed to do something, you have been disadvantaged in that process by going through that. Now, assuming that you were the owner before and you are still the same owner, then you have now, I guess, had a downgrade in your capability. Now, because that occurs in some jurisdictions, not all jurisdictions, but in some jurisdictions, they have a small window, a moratorium period, where you can apply under what is called a superseded planning scheme. So the old planning scheme. So they recognize that, hey, you have been disadvantaged. You were a landowner before, you were able to do this. You are now no longer able to do this. We're going to give you a small window where you can apply under the old rules, okay? Now, typically, if that's allowed, then that is going to be a 12-month window at a maximum in order to do that. So you need to very, very quickly go talk to a local town planner and get them to specifically look for superseded planning scheme allowances within your particular jurisdiction. I don't know under Plan SA whether this does apply or not, so I'm just giving you the principle to go and investigate. And if they do, go and apply under the old scheme. Now, the gotcha here is if you have just recently bought the site off somebody else and you bought it with the new rules in place, then you bought that knowing what the rules are, so you were not disadvantaged. So it's only if you were the owner under the old rules that this might apply. So could apply for some, won't apply for others. You have to be extraordinarily, detailed in your assessment of that, and you need to be quick under the process. Okay. Now that said, from a compliance perspective, let's just say none of that works for you. Okay. Then there is an outside chance, and there's no guarantees or certainties on this, but there is an outside chance that if you relodge the original application stating that the development approval was in place and put together what is called a performance solution to council, whilst it might not be compliant under the new rules, they can look at individual personal circumstances and go, actually, in this instance, that's okay. Now, there's no certainty on the outcome of that, but it is also another path to consider. You might find that it's a wasted application. It might not actually go anywhere. But I guess that is, your plan Z, so to speak. So I would kind of put that at the bottom of the pile. Either way, your starting position, go and talk to your local town planner. Next question, Nikki. Where is the best place to find investors to start small projects in Sydney like a duplex? So this is the second person with regards to, the very, very detailed response that I gave all the way up to Karina, a little bit earlier. So I'm going to say, Nikki, go back to a little bit earlier in this podcast and actually have a listen to that answer that I gave Karina. Next one is Christine. Christine says, is there any certification required to become a referral partner for foreign investors in property development? Christine, I genuinely don't know this. I genuinely don't know this answer. But what I do know, in raising capital from overseas, those investors aren't needing to comply with a lot of the ASIC regulations with regards to the money actually coming in, because ASIC is trying to protect Australian residents, and they can't know all the laws in all the lands all the way around the world. So they're just trying to look after the Australian residents that are actually investing. And so typically foreign investors don't have those legal protection mechanisms. Now, for that reason, I would assume, and it's only an assumption, I would assume that any referral partners actually coming into that, again, wouldn't have any protection mechanisms that sit underneath them. So I don't know the answer. I don't know if there is a certification requirement for that. What I would do is to say, go and speak to ASIC with regards to whether or not an AFSL license is required in order to, bring those partners in. My gut feeling is probably not, but you need to be speaking to, at minimum, speak to ASIC, and secondary, speak to, a lawyer who specialises in capital raising, and ideally in the immigration side of that as well. So three different levels to actually be checking on that. Lucky last question is Sandra. Sandra says, it's been said that we currently have a perfect storm in property right now, with so many positive, tailwind indicators about interest rates, migration, first home buyers incentives, fast council approvals, etc. But prices are not low. With medium house price over $1 million and very high prices for building and materials, I can't see, projects like renovations, small lot subdivisions and the like adding up to make a reasonable profit. Given the current market and economic conditions, what strategy would you pick for the Brisbane market? So Sandra, the first thing is, I cannot give you legal advice, or can't give you accounting advice. I can't give you financial planning advice. So and I don't know your personal circumstances, so I can't tell you what to do for your own circumstances. What I would say though is, the deals that you've just said aren't working, I see working on a daily basis. I see lots of people doing those exact deals every day in our community as we speak right now. So I'm convinced that they are working. The question is not if they work. The question is, where do they work? So you might be looking in an area where that deal doesn't stack up, but there might be another area where they do stack up. So I would be not trying to determine the area first and then force your strategy into it. But rather, I would choose your strategy and say, where does this strategy actually work? Right. So, what you'll find is where a duplex works and where a 4-lot subdivision works and where I guess a small apartment complex works. They're all going to be different locations. If I want to do a 20-lot land subdivision, I'm going to be out in the burbs. If I want to do a 3 or 4-story apartment complex, I want to be right near a train station or right near a shopping center. So the what I do determines where it works. So my gut feeling is that you're just not looking in the right area. Now, that said, I guess to answer the question with regards to, I guess, the costs and those sorts of things, you're right. Housing prices are not low, and the cost of construction is high. Okay. And so what we're seeing is that the sale of the finished product, the demand on that is pushing the price point for the sale price to go up. But housing affordability is the thing that are stopping a whole bunch of people buying properties right now. So at my developer launchpad event a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about a whole bunch of incentives. And if you want to go and watch my Over the Horizon presentation, I did a little bit of a summary of that. A whole bunch of incentives where the federal and state governments are incentivizing buyers to make housing affordability cheaper. So the price points aren't coming down, but what they're doing is they're making it easier for people to afford the price points. So they're doing a whole bunch of things with regards to helping them with low deposits. So you could do as little as a 5% deposit in some instances and as little as a 2% deposit in others. So you don't need to save for 20 years to get your deposit now. You also have opportunities to pull upwards of $50,000 out of your superannuation fund to be used towards that deposit. So even if you can't get that 5%, you now have a way to actually get that very, very fast out of your self-managed super fund. So those elements are helping you to actually get, I guess, the deposit side of things sorted. Then the next side of things is there's stamp duty relief and land tax concession reliefs and a whole bunch of other things, depending upon whether it's a brand new home, whether you're a first home buyer, and a whole bunch of other incentives that actually sit in around that. There's also first home buyers grants, which is just cash being given to you because you're a first home buyer in the first place. So all of these are trying to, I guess, make that part of things from a deposit and getting in and stamp duty and the amount of cash required, liquid cash, get into the deal much easier. The second part is, how big is the debt? Can I afford the debt? Now, there are incentives from both federal government and state government also trying to help us in this regard. So they are shared equity models where the government effectively becomes a co-tenant on that particular property or a co-owner on that property. So effectively a joint venture partner. So they will take upwards of a 40% ownership of the property. So if the property is $1 million, then they will take upwards of 400K as their share in buying the property, which means that you only need to come up with a loan for 600K. You take the I guess the 5% deposit off of that. Now it's only I guess 550K. So you're now, for $1 million property, only borrowing for 550,000, meaning from affordability perspective, now it's way more affordable. So what I see is all of those incentives, whilst the costs of things are not going to come down, those incentives are going to bring more buyers into the market in order to take the stock, in order to overcome those challenges that you have just rightfully highlighted. That said, folks, that is the last of our questions, and hoping that you got plenty out of that. If you yourself have a question that you would like me to answer, we do open mic nights on the first Sunday of every single month. If you click on the link below, propdev.info/open-mic, then I will do my very best to review and respond to your questions on our next open mic session. That said, folks, we run meetups all the way around the country. I would love to see you at one of these. We run them in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. They are physical in nature. We have industry experts and real deal presentations every single month, plus networking, plus masterminding, plus we kick on socially at the bar afterwards. So these things are super fun. You can turn up to them physically. We also live stream them. So no matter where you are in the country, you'll be able to participate in one of those. And so, folks, hoping you got plenty out of that and that I get to see you at one of our upcoming meetups. Till next time, folks. See you soon. Bye.